The Lighthouse That Guided Time. Riley had been walking the rocky coastline for 20 minutes when the lighthouse appeared around the bend, which was strange because, according to the vacation rental map, there shouldn't be any lighthouse on this stretch of Maine coast for another 3 miles. The structure stood alone on a small rocky outcrop, connected to the mainland by a narrow stone causeway that looked like it had been there for centuries. The lighthouse itself was painted in the classic white with red trim, but something about it seemed timeless. Not old exactly, but as if it existed slightly outside the normal flow of things. Riley approached the heavy wooden door at the base, expecting it to be locked. Tourist attractions usually were, especially ones that weren't marked on any official maps. But the brass handle turned easily, and the door swung open with a gentle creak that sounded almost welcoming. Inside, a spiral staircase wound upward, disappearing into shadows above. The walls were thick stone, and everything smelled of salt air and something else. Something like the scent of old books mixed with sea spray. Natural light filtered down from somewhere high above, creating pools of golden illumination on the worn wooden steps. The first landing came sooner than expected. Riley paused at a tall, narrow window and peered out, expecting to see the same rocky coastline and empty ocean. Instead, the view showed a bustling Coast Guard station. Modern patrol boats bobbed at a concrete pier that definitely hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. Personnel in crisp uniforms moved with purpose between buildings that looked distinctly 1980s. All clean lines and practical architecture. A large radar dish slowly rotated on top of the main building. Riley blinked hard and looked again. The scene remained stubbornly, impossibly present. Through the salt-stained glass, the 1980s Coast Guard station continued its daily operations, completely unaware of being observed from a lighthouse that shouldn't exist. The second-floor window revealed an even more dramatic shift. Gone were the modern patrol boats. In their place, a thriving 1920s harbor spread out like a scene from an old movie. Steamships with tall smokestacks shared the water with the last of the great sailing vessels. The pier was wooden now, lined with warehouses and busy with workers loading cargo. Horse-drawn carts moved along dirt roads, while automobiles, actual Model T Fords, puttered between them like mechanical oddities. At the center of it all, Riley could see this very lighthouse, but in its working prime. The beacon at the top was lit even in daytime, and a keeper in period dress was visible on the observation deck, maintaining the massive lens apparatus. "What is this place?" Riley whispered to the empty stairwell. The third-floor window looked out on a world that seemed to belong in a history textbook. Tall sailing ships with full rigging dominated the harbor. Not pleasure craft, but working vessels that meant business. The shoreline was dotted with simple wooden buildings and what looked like the very beginning of a settlement. Smoke rose from chimneys, and people in 1850s clothing moved about their daily tasks of survival in what was clearly still a frontier community. The lighthouse in this time period was newer, its paint fresh and bright. Riley could see the lighthouse keeper, a bearded man in wool clothing, carefully tending to oil lamps that would have been state-of-the-art technology for guiding ships safely to shore. One more floor remained. Riley climbed slowly now, trying to process what was happening. Each window had shown the same view, but from a different era. The lighthouse had been there through it all, a constant presence, guiding travelers safely home, across decades of change. The top floor was different. Instead of a single window, the entire level was surrounded by glass, the lighthouse's beacon room. But the massive lens and light apparatus that should have been there was replaced by something impossible to describe. It looked like crystallized time itself, rotating slowly and casting gentle light in all directions. Through the glass, Riley could see not just one time period, but all of them at once, past and present, and what might be future swirled together like layers in a snow globe. Ships from every era shared the same waters. Viking longboats alongside steamships, alongside solar-powered vessels that belonged to some distant tomorrow. And then Riley understood. The lighthouse wasn't just showing different times. It was the point that connected them all. For over a century, maybe longer, this light had served the same purpose, guiding travelers safely through dangerous waters. The technology changed, the ships evolved, the people wore different clothes and spoke with different accents, but the human need for guidance, for safe harbor, for a light in the darkness, that remained constant. Riley descended the staircase with new eyes. Each window now seemed less like a mystery and more like a gift, a reminder that the lighthouse keeper's great-great-grandmother had stood at that same beacon, helping ships navigate treacherous rocks. That Coast Guard operators had maintained the same tradition of service. That, right now, GPS satellites were providing the same essential function, bringing people safely home. Outside, the lighthouse looked exactly as it had when Riley first approached. The rocky coastline stretched empty in both directions, and the family's vacation rental was visible in the distance. But something fundamental had changed. Not in the world, but in Riley's understanding of it. Walking back along the causeway, Riley turned for one last look. The lighthouse stood patient and eternal, its beacon dark in the afternoon sun, but somehow still radiating purpose. A Coast Guard helicopter passed overhead, following the same flight path that sailing ships had navigated 2 centuries before. The lighthouse might not appear on modern maps, but it didn't need to. Some things are so essential, so fundamentally human, that they exist outside of ordinary time, connecting past to present to future, with the simple promise that no matter how dark the night or treacherous the waters, there will always be a light to guide us safely home.